Pregnant wife catches millionaire on vacation with mistress. The ending is unbelievable. You will not believe what happens when a young, unsuspecting wife, pregnant and hopelessly in love, discovers her wealthy husband's secret getaway with a breathtakingly beautiful mistress. It's the kind of story that defies explanation. A millionaire who can afford to hide his tracks, a loyal wife who risks everything to uncover the truth, and a mistress who thinks she's got it all. As tensions rise and hearts break, you'll see betrayal, redemption, and jaw-dropping twists that seem too wild to be real. Stay tuned, because this saga will challenge every assumption you've ever had about love, loyalty, and the price of deception. Michelle Brown stood in the center of her immaculately designed living room, a faint tremor in her hands as she stroked the curve of her pregnant belly. The sun poured in through the panoramic windows, illuminating the plush couches, the sleek marble floors, and the tasteful decor that she had painstakingly chosen with her husband, Stephen Brown. Everything about their penthouse screamed success and style, the kind of success that often arrived alongside the relentless gossip and unwelcome scrutiny of the ultra-rich. And yet, for Michelle, it was just home. It was supposed to be the safe place where she could start the next chapter of her life, a chapter that included motherhood and the promise of a strong family bond. Even as she tried to maintain her composure, Michelle's thoughts swirled. She had caught wind of rumors that her husband, the charismatic millionaire entrepreneur Stephen Brown, had been seen boarding a private jet to an exotic location with a woman who wasn't her. At first, she dismissed it as nothing more than idle chatter from the tabloids or jealous acquaintances who thrived on stirring trouble among the wealthy. But then she saw the manila envelope on their dining table, discreetly placed there by one of her closest friends, Anna Kingston, a friend who also happened to be the personal assistant of Stephen's longtime business partner. Inside that envelope were photographs. Stephen and another woman, whose name appeared to be Sasha Morgan, strolling hand in hand at an exclusive Caribbean resort called the Jade Lagoon. The final picture in the stack showed them gazing into each other's eyes, locked in an unmistakably intimate moment. Michelle pressed a hand to her mouth, steeling herself to remain calm. Her pregnancy made emotional turbulence risky. She knew she had to keep a level head, not just for her own well-being, but for the baby's. With her heart hammering in her chest, she picked up her phone and dialed Anna's number. Her voice trembled as she asked for details, unsure if she even wanted the answers. Anna's voice was subdued, edged with pity. "Michelle," she said, "I'm so sorry you had to see those photos." The news started circulating around the office just a few days ago. People have been whispering. Stephen didn't exactly try to hide it from everyone except you. When I found out, I knew I had to tell you. Her friend's sincerity and the heartbreak in her voice were undeniable. Michelle hated the feeling of vulnerability that overcame her. She thanked Anna, hung up, then allowed a single tear to trace down her cheek before collecting herself. She wasn't just a grieving wife, she was the mother of Stephen's unborn child. She would find out the truth, and she would do it on her own terms. If the rumors were false, she could move forward with a clean conscience. If they were true, she would be prepared to confront her husband directly. The next day, Michelle recalled moments in her marriage that, in hindsight, might have been red flags. Stephen had returned from business trips with vague alibis of late meetings and unexpected delays. His phone seemed permanently attached to him, guarded by passwords that changed monthly. She remembered fleeting glances at suspicious text messages Stephen had always brushed off with a quick, dismissive explanation. Still, Michelle had always believed in the vow they shared when they were married in a lavish ceremony at the Redwood estate. She trusted him because, in her mind, trust was a choice. She had no desire to sabotage their relationship by turning paranoid or accusatory. In the world of the wealthy, especially for someone like Stephen, who made his first fortune in venture capital, by the age of 30 opportunists and sycophants lurked in every corner. Michelle knew there were countless women eager to attach themselves to a man of influence and money. But Stephen had always reassured her that he was loyal. "I'd be a fool to throw this away," he used to say, drawing her into a kiss. So Michelle had decided to believe him. Now, standing in the middle of a living room that felt far emptier than it had the day before, she realized she needed more than reassurance. She needed proof. She had to see everything with her own eyes. Gathering her courage, she made a plan to confront Stephen on neutral ground, away from the household staff and the looming presence of the city's paparazzi. She dialed his personal assistant's number, a woman named Claire Henderson, to ask about his schedule. Predictably, Claire informed her that Stephen was away on a business retreat in the Caribbean. Michelle asked if she could join him there, and Claire hemmed and hawed, eventually feigning ignorance. That alone was enough to confirm Michelle's suspicions. She decided to contact an old acquaintance, Lucas Grant, a seasoned private investigator known for his discretion. Lucas had helped one of Michelle's close friends navigate a messy divorce from a similarly unfaithful partner. He came highly recommended, though his services were notoriously expensive. But if there was anything Michelle had, it was money, and a burning desire for the truth. She wouldn't have batted an eye at spending a fortune to protect her child's future. When Lucas arrived at the penthouse, he was the epitome of professionalism: crisp suit, well-trimmed beard, and a firm handshake. He took a seat on the sofa, his posture perfectly erect, conveying his unwavering focus. Michelle explained her situation, her voice heavy with tension. Lucas listened intently, jotting down notes in a small leather-bound notebook. By the time she finished, tears hovered in the corners of her eyes, but her voice was resolute. "I need to know everything," she told him, "and I'm prepared to go there myself." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Michelle, that might be risky," he said. "Given your condition, traveling might not be easy." She cupped her pregnant belly protectively. "I'll do whatever it takes. My baby deserves the truth, deserves a father who is honest. If he's not honest, I need to know what steps to take for our future." Lucas nodded, respecting her resolve. He promised to conduct preliminary surveillance, gather details, and prepare the ground for her arrival, if that was what she truly wanted. But as Michelle lay in bed that night, her mind swarming with apprehension, it wasn't just about a cheating husband. It was about betrayal, deception, and the heart-wrenching possibility that the man she had built her life with was someone she no longer knew. Days later, Michelle got the call she had been dreading. Lucas's voice was calm yet grave. "I'm at the Jade Lagoon. I've confirmed that Stephen is indeed here with a woman named Sasha Morgan. They're registered under an alias, but it's definitely him. I have photos, room logs, the works." Michelle's hands shook, though she tried to remain composed. "I'm coming down." Lucas hesitated. "Are you sure? It might be tough on you, physically and emotionally. This place isn't exactly a quick trip away. It's a secluded resort on a private island." Michelle's voice was firm. "Book me a flight, Lucas. I'll handle the rest. I'm not leaving my child's future to speculation." The journey to the Caribbean was longer than Michelle expected, fraught with tension and a swirl of conflicting emotions. She kept her departure a secret from everyone except Anna, whom she trusted implicitly. Anna helped her arrange a private plane. Being the friend of an heiress had its advantages. During the flight, Michelle stared out the window at cotton candy clouds drifting below. She recalled the early days of her relationship with Stephen, how charming he had been, how he'd built her trust brick by brick until she believed nothing could shake it. Now, she felt each of those bricks crumbling under the weight of what she had discovered. Upon landing at a small airstrip near the Jade Lagoon, Michelle was met by Lucas, who ushered her into a discreet SUV. "We'll head to a private villa I rented under a false name," he said quietly, his voice tinged with concern. "We need to keep this low-key. Stephen has connections everywhere." Michelle nodded. Her heart pounded in her chest, in sync with each bump in the road as they traversed dense, tropical foliage toward the famed resort. The Jade Lagoon was known for its exclusive clientele and their clandestine affairs. Nobody asked questions here, because everyone came with secrets they preferred kept under wraps. They passed the main entrance, a grand arch of tropical flowers, and a winding driveway lined with towering palm trees. Everything about this place oozed luxury, from the shimmering lagoon at its heart to the discreet staff who were well practiced in giving guests space and privacy. The sun was just setting, painting the sky in warm orange and pink hues. It was paradisiacal, the perfect backdrop for romance or betrayal. Once settled in the rented villa, Lucas spread out a series of photographs and notes on the dining table. Michelle braced herself to look. There was Stephen laughing with Sasha at one of the lagoon's private cabanas. Another shot showed them dancing in what appeared to be a beachfront party, his arms wrapped around her waist. The final image, the one that nearly broke Michelle's heart, depicted Sasha wearing a diamond necklace that Michelle recognized all too well. Stephen had once mentioned wanting to gift it to someone special. Michelle had assumed that someone would be her. She shut her eyes, inhaling deeply to keep her composure. "When is the last time you saw them?" she whispered. "This afternoon," Lucas replied. They'd been spending most of their time around a private bungalow at the far edge of the resort. "I have some audio recordings too, though they're mostly muffled. It's clear they're together in a romantic capacity." A lump formed in Michelle's throat. So it was real. The man she had promised to love forever was in another woman's arms, flaunting their relationship at this lavish haven of hedonism. She opened her eyes, a fierce determination igniting within them. "I want to catch him in the act," she said. "I want him to see me, face to face, so he can't deny what he's done." Lucas hesitated again. "Michelle, the first understand your need for confrontation, but remember your health. This could be dangerous for you and the baby." Stephen might not react well when cornered. Her voice trembled, though not with fear. This was pure resolve. He can handle it however he wants. "I'm not leaving without answers." The next day, Michelle disguised herself in a loose sundress, a wide-brimmed hat, and oversized sunglasses. Lucas accompanied her as she navigated the resort's pathways, framed by lush greenery and the faint sound of steel drums playing in the background. Her belly was more pronounced now, nearly 6 months along, but the loose fabric helped conceal her pregnancy from passing glances. They reached an oceanfront bar where Lucas had tracked Stephen and Sasha earlier in the morning. Michelle's heart hammered like a drum. She scanned the crowd, couples sipping cocktails, a group of well-dressed vacationers dancing near a DJ booth, staff weaving through the throng. Then she saw him. Stephen was leaning against the polished mahogany bar, wearing a casual linen shirt that highlighted his athletic frame. Next to him stood a tall, slender brunette in a white bikini cover-up, her long hair cascading down her back like a waterfall. Sasha. Michelle swallowed hard, her palms slick with sweat. There was Stephen, her husband, tilting his head intimately toward Sasha, whispering something that made Sasha laugh and place a hand on his shoulder. The moment was so ordinary yet profoundly earth-shattering. Michelle was torn between rage and despair. She reminded herself she had come here for answers. She moved closer, weaving between guests until she was just a few feet away. Sasha was the first to notice her. The brunette's smile wavered, her eyes darting nervously from Michelle to Stephen. Her expression shifted to confusion, as though she recognized the resemblance in Michelle's features from pictures of the happy couple that had occasionally surfaced in the media. Stephen turned to see what had captured Sasha's attention. When his eyes landed on Michelle's face, his expression morphed from relaxed contentment to sheer astonishment. In that split second, he looked exactly like a man with a guilty conscience caught red-handed. His jaw went slack, eyes wide, and he fumbled with the glass in his hand. "Michelle," he stammered. He looked at her stomach, hidden beneath her dress, but he already knew about her pregnancy. It was impossible not to. "What are you doing here?" She couldn't keep the tremor out of her voice. "I could ask you the same thing." For a moment, the entire world seemed to slow. Sasha glanced at Stephen, searching for cues on how to react, while Stephen stared at Michelle as though she were an apparition. The guests around them continued to laugh and dance, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing at the bar. Then, a jolt. Stephen reached for Michelle's arm, as if to steer her away from prying eyes. "Let's go somewhere private to talk," he mumbled, voice low and urgent. Sasha, left behind at the bar, looked stricken. Michelle allowed herself to be guided down a secluded pathway lined with tropical flora. Heart pounding, she finally found the words she'd bottled up for days. "I believed in you," she said, her voice filled with hurt. "You told me you were at a business retreat. This is what your business retreat looks like." Stephen struggled to compose himself. "Look, Michelle, it's complicated. You shouldn't have come here in your condition." She flinched. "My condition? You mean being pregnant with your child? Don't you dare use my pregnancy as a smokescreen for your betrayal." Stephen's eyes flickered with shame, or perhaps anger. Michelle couldn't quite tell. He was a master at masking his emotions, a skill that had served him well in high-stakes negotiations. But now, cornered by his own wife, he fumbled. "I never wanted you to find out like this," he began haltingly. "Sasha and I, W.E., met at a charity gala a few months ago. Things just happened." She shook her head in disbelief. "Things don't just happen. You made a choice." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Was I not enough for you, Stephen? Was our unborn child not enough to keep you loyal?" He opened his mouth, but words failed him. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "It's just, I've been feeling trapped, pressured. The business, the baby, our lifestyle. I needed an escape." Michelle felt her hand tighten into a fist. "So you chose this escape," she said bitterly. "Look me in the eye and tell me if you love her." Stephen sighed. "It's not about love. It's about wanting something for myself, something that wasn't predetermined by a board meeting or by the demands of a marriage that's always under public scrutiny. You have no idea what it's like to." She slapped him before he could finish. The impact was muted by the cacophony of the nearby ocean waves, but the sting was tangible. "Don't you dare blame me for your actions," she hissed. "You think this marriage was easy for me? I've sacrificed my career, my privacy, my life to stand by your side. And now, when I need you most, you run off with someone else?" Stephen rubbed his cheek, anger mingling with guilt in his eyes. But before he could speak again, Michelle turned on her heel and stormed away, tears finally streaming down her face. She knew the confrontation wasn't over, but she needed space to breathe, to think, and to protect her unborn child from the roiling storm of emotions that threatened to consume her. Michelle spent that night in the rented villa, pacing the floor as Lucas watched from a respectful distance. She tried to eat dinner, but every bite felt like ash in her mouth. The confrontation had been worse than she imagined, not just for what was said, but for the glaring confirmation that Stephen was in deeper than a mere fling. The man she loved had chosen someone else while she carried his child. Early the next morning, Michelle received an unexpected knock on the door. Startled, she beckoned Lucas to answer it. Standing in the doorway was Sasha Morgan, her eyes filled with anxiety. She looked far less confident than she had the night before. Dressed in a simple sundress, her posture was tense. She asked if she could speak with Michelle alone. Unsure of her motives but too curious to refuse, Michelle stepped onto the villa's veranda, instructing Lucas to remain inside. A slight breeze rustled the palm trees overhead, carrying with it the scent of salt and tropical blooms. Sasha seemed uncertain how to start, fidgeting with the fringe of her dress. Finally she managed, "Michelle, the first one to say, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were pregnant." Michelle's face hardened. "Does it matter? Married is married. You knew he wasn't a free man." Sasha's eyes dropped. "Yes, I did, but Stephen made it sound like your marriage was effectively over. He never mentioned the baby until last night." A wave of conflicting emotions welled up in Michelle's chest. She studied Sasha, seeing not just a mistress, but a woman who had fallen for a polished lie. Or maybe Sasha was lying now. Michelle couldn't be sure. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone clipped. Sasha hesitated. "Because I need you to know that I'm not here to break your family. I developed real feelings for Stephen, and I thought he felt the same. Now I see how messed up everything is. He lied to you, and he lied to me too." Michelle's voice was icy. "What do you want from me? Forgiveness? Some measure of absolution?" Sasha looked hurt. "No, he's spiraling, Michelle. His business deals are in a precarious state, and he's under a lot of pressure to secure a new round of funding. I think he's cracking under it. He told me he needed an escape, and that's what this was supposed to be. But I see now that this has gone way beyond a fling. It's become destructive for everyone involved." Michelle's nails dug into her palms. So that was Stephen's perspective. She and the baby were burdens, and Sasha was an escape. "If you really cared about not breaking up our family, you wouldn't have come here with him," she said, quietly, with an edge that made Sasha wince. Before Sasha could respond, a thunderous voice shattered the moment. It was Stephen striding onto the veranda, wearing a white shirt that billowed in the morning breeze. His face was contorted with anger and something akin to desperation. He shot Sasha an accusatory glare, then turned to Michelle. "What is this?" he demanded. "Are you two ganging up on me?" Michelle folded her arms protectively over her belly. "You brought all of this on yourself, Stephen. Don't you dare play the victim." Stephen's gaze flickered over Sasha, who looked like she wanted to vanish into thin air. Then he focused on Michelle, seemingly torn between contrition and defiance. "I never intended for this to blow up in my face like this," he said. "But you both decided to have a little meeting behind my back?" Sasha tried to interrupt. "I just wanted to," he cut her off, voice rising. "No, Sasha, you said you'd stay discreet. Now you're dragging Michelle into this. What were you thinking?" A tremor of fear passed through Sasha's eyes. "I'm not dragging anyone. She has a right to know." Stephen looked ready to snap. Michelle could practically see him wrestling with the situation, trying to salvage a sense of control. He pointed at Sasha. "We need to talk alone." Michelle felt her heart tighten. She was about to protest when she saw Sasha's lips compress into a thin line. Sasha appeared genuinely unsettled by Stephen's raging temper. In that moment, Michelle realized something crucial. No matter how strong or resolute Stephen seemed, he was on unstable footing. And it wasn't just about their marriage or the affair. Something deeper was unraveling inside him. "You can talk all you want, Stephen," Michelle said, stepping closer. "But don't think for a second that you can intimidate me or Sasha into staying silent about what you've done. I will protect my child, and if you try to bully me into submission, you'll find out exactly how much I'm capable of fighting back." Sasha's eyes filled with tears. Stephen looked at them both, then spun on his heel and stormed away, muttering curses under his breath. Sasha took a step backward, clearly shaken, then mumbled a quick apology to Michelle and hurried after him. Michelle watched them go, a disquieting sense of foreboding creeping in. Beneath the veneer of wealth and glamour, something dangerous lurked, simmering like a volcano about to erupt. She just hoped she could get out of this place with her sanity and her baby's safety intact. Back inside, Lucas approached quietly. I saw him storm out. Are you okay? He asked. Concern etched across his usually stoic features. Michelle exhaled, struggling to keep tears at bay. No, I'm not. But I have to be strong. Lucas nodded, then pulled out his phone. I've been digging deeper into Stephen's finances and business deals, like you asked. It's complicated, but it looks like there's more trouble than he's letting on, trouble that could affect you and the baby if his empire crashes. Michelle's pulse quickened. What do you mean? Lucas scrolled through documents on his phone. He's on the verge of losing a major investment that was supposed to fund his next venture. Investors have been spooked by rumors of misconduct, maybe personal or professional. We're not sure yet. If this next deal falls through, he's going to have liquidity issues. Enough to put your joint assets at risk if he's leveraged them. Michelle sank onto a chair, feeling suddenly lightheaded. All her life, she had believed Stephen was a financial wizard who always knew how to land on his feet. He never told me, she said, swallowing hard. I knew he was stressed, but I didn't realize it was that serious. Lucas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. That's why you hired me. I'll keep digging, but you need to consider your options. If he's lying about his affair, he could be lying about the state of your finances too. Michelle felt anger surge through her. She had trusted Stephen implicitly, believing he would always safeguard their future. Now it seemed he'd risked everything for an affair, for a misguided attempt at escaping responsibilities. Keep searching, she told Lucas, her voice steely. I want the full picture. That evening, the sky erupted into a watercolor painting of oranges, pinks, and purples. Michelle tried to find some solace in the breathtaking view from her villa's balcony, but the turmoil in her heart remained as fierce as ever. She dialed Anna's number, needing a familiar voice to anchor her. When Anna picked up, the relief in Michelle's sigh was palpable. Tell me everything, Anna insisted gently. Michelle recounted the confrontation at the bar, Sasha's unexpected visit, and the ominous possibility that Stephen's business empire might be crumbling. Her friend listened quietly, interjecting only to voice her shock or to offer a comforting murmur. Finally, Anna said, Michelle, you need to leave. Come back to the city. You're pregnant, and this stress is dangerous for both you and the baby. There's nothing more you can do there. Michelle closed her eyes, pressing her palm against her belly. I can't leave yet, Anna. I need closure. I need to hear Stephen admit it all. And if I come home, it'll look like I'm surrendering or running away, and the tabloids will spin their own story. I have to do this on my terms. Anna hesitated. I understand. Just promise me you'll be careful. Michelle promised, but a small voice inside her whispered that being careful might not be enough. The next morning, Michelle was awakened by a sharp knock at her villa's door. She groaned, swinging her legs out of bed, her belly heavy as she tried to rise. Lucas was already at the door, conversing in hushed tones with someone. When Michelle entered the living area, she found Sasha again, looking even more distraught than before. I'm sorry to disturb you, Sasha began, voice trembling, but I had nowhere else to go. Lucas eyed her warily. What's going on? Sasha glanced around, as though fearful of being overheard. Stephen's lost it. He's raging about how everything is falling apart. Last night, he grabbed my wrists so hard he left bruises. He kept yelling that I betrayed him by talking to Michelle, that this was all my fault. She held out her arm, revealing dark finger-shaped marks. Michelle felt her heart skip a beat. She knew Stephen could be abrasive, but this was new territory. Why are you telling us this? Sasha bit her lip, tears threatening to spill over. Because this is all spiraling out of control. I was prepared for an affair, for some secrecy, but not violence, and not with a pregnant wife involved. I'm in over my head. He's threatening to ruin me if I leave. He says he'll use his money and connections to destroy my life. Michelle glanced at Lucas, who gave a subtle nod. It seemed plausible, Stephen, cornered and desperate, might turn vindictive. After all, reputation was everything in his world. But could he really go so far? Sasha continued. I don't want to be with him anymore, Michelle. The first swear. But I need a way out, some kind of protection. And I can help you. Michelle's eyebrows shot up. Help me how? Sasha reached into her purse and retrieved a slim voice recorder. I have audio recordings. Stephen confided in me about his business troubles. He also said some horrible things about you, about how he'd handle it if you ever found out about the affair. Michelle's stomach twisted. Part of her didn't want to hear those ugly truths. But if Stephen was indeed spiraling out of control, these recordings could prove valuable both legally and emotionally. Why would you record him? She asked, suspicious. Sasha's hands shook. Because I'm not stupid. I knew this affair could blow up in my face. I needed leverage in case Stephen tried to throw me under the bus. I never expected it to come to this, though. Lucas stepped in, his voice measured. We'll take those recordings, but we need to verify them. You understand, I'm sure. Sasha nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Michelle studied the younger woman's face, seeing genuine fear etched across her features. She wondered if Sasha was truly remorseful or just desperate, but her gut told her Sasha was sincere. All right, Michelle said softly, give us what you have. In return, we'll help you get off this island. Lucas can arrange safe transportation, can't you? Lucas nodded. I'll make some calls. A flicker of relief passed across Sasha's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm done with him. Michelle forced herself to remain composed, even as a confusing wave of empathy washed over her. Sasha was, without doubt, the catalyst for this heartbreak, but she was also a victim of Stephen's manipulative and potentially abusive side. Let's talk somewhere private, Michelle said, glancing meaningfully at Lucas. The three of them retreated to a small study in the villa, locking the door behind them. Sasha handed over the recorder. There's also a digital folder on my phone, she said, tapping the device. I'll send it to you. Lucas pulled out a laptop and began transferring the files. Meanwhile, Michelle took a deep breath. Sasha, she said gently, do you know if Stephen has any offshore accounts or hidden assets? Sasha chewed her lip. He never shared all the details, but he did mention something about a shell company in the Caymans. He said he used it to funnel money away from prying eyes, especially from you, so you wouldn't ask questions about big withdrawals. Michelle felt her blood run cold. So Stephen was hiding large sums of money, likely to protect himself if things went south. It was one more betrayal, one more secret in a growing list that threatened to drown her. She steeled herself. We need that information. If Lucas can trace the shell company, it might give me some bargaining power, especially if Stephen tries to blackmail me or freeze our shared assets. Sasha nodded quickly, pulling up an email thread on her phone. He used an alias, James Kincaid, for that account. He had me send some documents to that name once. Lucas's eyebrows shot up. Send me whatever you have. This is big. Over the next hour, they combed through files, audio recordings, and messages, unraveling a tangled web of deception. Not only did Stephen appear to be embezzling, or at least shifting company funds into private accounts, but he had also forged certain documents that implicated some of his business partners. The more they uncovered, the more certain Michelle became that Stephen was in over his head, desperate, dangerous, and trapped by his own machinations. By the time they finished, Michelle felt both vindicated and profoundly sickened. This was the man she married, the father of her unborn child, a man who now stood poised on the brink of financial and moral collapse, capable of hurting anyone who got in his way. She pressed a palm against her belly, silently promising her child that no matter what, she'd protect them from this chaos. Finally, Sasha rose, her expression a mixture of relief and dread. What do I do now? She asked, her voice small. Lucas took charge. I'll book you a private boat to the mainland. From there, You can catch a flight back to the States or anywhere you choose. Lay low for a while, change your number, and stay off social media. Stephen might come after you legally, but with these recordings, you should have enough leverage to ensure he backs off. Sasha's eyes welled up with tears again. "Thank you. I'm so sorry, Michelle. I never meant to—" "Stop," Michelle said, raising a hand. Her voice was weary. "Just go. Start over somewhere far away from him. That's the best apology you can give me." Sasha nodded, shoulders trembling, then quickly left to pack her things. As the door shut behind her, Michelle felt a strange weight lift from her shoulders. One piece of the puzzle was on its way out of her life. But the biggest challenge still remained, confronting Stephen one last time, armed with the truth and the leverage to protect herself and her child. That evening, Michelle received a text from Stephen. "We need to talk. Meet me at the lagoon pier at sunset. Alone." She showed it to Lucas, who immediately frowned. It could be dangerous. He's desperate. Michelle's face hardened with determination. "I'm going. He won't try anything reckless in a public area. There'll be other guests around." Lucas looked uncertain, but he couldn't dissuade her. Instead, he offered a compromise. "I'll keep watch from a distance. If anything goes wrong, I'll intervene." Agreed upon their plan, Michelle found herself at the lagoon pier just as the sun began its descent. Candles lined the railing, casting golden flecks across the water. Soft music drifted in from a nearby beach party, but here it was oddly still. Stephen stood at the far end, leaning against a post, staring into the horizon as if the answers to his problems might be found in the setting sun. Michelle approached, her footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. He turned to face her, his eyes laden with fatigue and turmoil. "Michelle," he started, voice low and thick with emotion. "Thank you for coming." She stopped a few feet away, crossing her arms protectively over her belly. "Talk," she said simply. He exhaled a shaky breath. "I messed up. You have every right to hate me. But I need you to understand this wasn't about you. It was about me. I was drowning under the pressure of keeping everything together, our lifestyle, our public image, the new business ventures. And then the baby. It just felt like one more responsibility I wasn't ready for." Michelle's jaw tightened, but she forced herself to remain calm. "So you thought having an affair, lying to me, and risking your empire was the solution?" Stephen raked a hand through his hair. "I know, it sounds insane. I guess I was just trying to feel alive again, to escape for a moment, but everything spiraled out of control." She studied him, her heart aching with both rage and a trace of lingering affection. "It's more than that. You hid finances from me, set up offshore accounts, and forged business documents. You gambled our future and our child's future on your so-called escape." He blanched. "How do you know?" Michelle finished, arching an eyebrow. "I have recordings, bank statements, messages from Sasha, and the research of a very good private investigator." "You're caught, Stephen." He paled visibly, fists clenching at his sides. "So, what are you going to do? Turn me into the authorities? Ruin me?" She stared at him for a long moment, the flickering candlelight dancing in her eyes. "I should," she said bitterly, "but I'm thinking of our child. You're still going to be a father, whether you're behind bars or not." His face contorted with a rush of conflicting emotions, fear, regret, and maybe a flicker of hope. "So you're giving me a way out?" She let out a mirthless laugh. "A way out? Don't misunderstand. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for our child. What happens to us, to this marriage, is another story." Stephen braced himself, as though expecting a final blow. "Name your terms," he said, shoulders sagging. She lifted her chin. "First, you'll sign over a portion of your assets to a trust in our child's name. Immediately. Lucas has the documents ready. Second, you'll come clean about the affair publicly or privately, but you'll tell the truth. No more rumors, no more tabloids twisting the story. And third, you'll undergo therapy. You'll get help for whatever it is that made you think all of this was acceptable. He sucked in a sharp breath, eyes wavering. And what about us? That depends on whether you can prove to me that you're willing to change, not just by talking, but by taking real, tangible steps. I'm not promising a reconciliation, but I won't shut the door completely if you show genuine remorse. Stephen seemed on the brink of tears. I am remorseful, Michelle. The first swear, I'll do anything. She turned away, gazing at the last sliver of sun dipping below the horizon. Then start by signing those documents tonight. Lucas is waiting at my villa. He hesitated, then nodded, running a trembling hand over his face. All right, he said quietly. I'll do it. They walked back together, the silence between them as thick as the humid Caribbean air. Michelle felt no triumph in his acquiescence, only a heavy sadness. Love, once so vibrant, had been tainted by dishonesty and betrayal. If this was to be the start of a new chapter, it began with the ashes of what once was. Back at the villa, Lucas had the legal documents ready. Stephen scanned them, his face grim but resolute, then signed on the dotted lines. When it was done, Michelle tucked the papers away, feeling a measure of relief. Their child's financial future was secured, regardless of how the tabloids or the courts might eventually spin the rest of the story. Her baby would be protected. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Michelle excused herself and retreated to her bedroom. She didn't invite Stephen in, and he didn't ask. That night, she tossed and turned, her mind a swirling storm of memories, good and bad. She recalled the early days of their romance, the excitement of building a life together, and then the bitter taste of the betrayal that had led them here. At dawn, Michelle woke to find a handwritten note slipped under her door. Michelle, thank you for giving me this chance to do right by you and our child. I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I will prove I'm worthy of it. I'm leaving you the Jade Lagoon so you can have space and peace. I've booked a separate room for myself at a different resort on the island, and I'm catching a flight back to the city tomorrow to face the board, the investors, everything. I'm truly sorry. I hope one day you can forgive me, Stephen. She read it twice, unsure how to feel. Was this a manipulative ploy to gain her sympathy? Or was it a genuine gesture of contrition? In any case, she was glad to be free of his presence. At least for the moment, she spent the remainder of the day resting, enjoying the tropical scenery, and conversing with Lucas about the logistics of heading home. Sasha, for her part, had already departed early that morning, leaving only a terse text of gratitude. The following evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of tangerine and magenta, Michelle found herself alone on the beach outside her villa. The sand was cool beneath her feet, and gentle waves lapped at the shore. This was her first moment of genuine solace since she arrived. She cradled her belly, whispering to her unborn child. She spoke of courage and love, of mistakes and forgiveness. She told the baby how fiercely she wanted to protect them from life's cruelties, how determined she was to give them a stable home, even if it meant raising them alone. Suddenly, the hush of the beach was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. She turned, expecting perhaps Lucas checking on her. But it wasn't Lucas. It was Stephen, breathless, eyes wide. "Michelle, I'm sorry," he gasped, bending over to catch his breath. "I got on a flight, but I couldn't leave without seeing you one last time." She tensed. "What do you mean you couldn't leave? Did something else happen?" He looked at her, a strange mixture of awe and regret etched across his features. "I realized how close I came to losing everything, my family, my integrity, my future. I know you don't owe me anything, but I had to tell you face to face that I'm going to fix my mistakes, no matter how long it takes. I won't run from this, and I won't run from you." Michelle felt tears prick at her eyes. The last rays of sunlight caught the glistening in them, making them shimmer. She wanted to be furious, to cling to her anger. But a small part of her, a part that had once adored this man, heard the conviction in his voice. Maybe it was too late for them, or maybe it wasn't. But right now, there was a faint glimmer of possibility. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. Stephen stepped closer, cautiously. "I'll earn it back, day by day. I'll do whatever it takes." In that surreal, half-lit beach, they stood facing each other, two broken souls uncertain of what the future held. The waves continued their gentle lullaby, and for a moment they let themselves simply exist in each other's presence. No lies, no secrets, just the fragile remnants of what had once been love. And then, in a twist that nobody, not Michelle, not Stephen, and certainly not any meddling onlooker could have predicted, Michelle felt a sudden, sharp twinge in her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. Stephen rushed to her side, panic flashing in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked frantically. Michelle grimaced, breathing through what she recognized as a contraction. It was too early, she was only 6 months along. "Something's happening," she gasped, fear gripping her heart. Stephen scooped her into his arms, sprinting up the beach toward the villa. He shouted for Lucas, who dashed out, phone already in hand. Within minutes, they were racing in an SUV to the nearest hospital on the mainland. For hours, Michelle lay in a sterile hospital room, monitors beeping, doctors and nurses moving in controlled chaos. She was on the brink of premature labor. Fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins, and in that terrifying moment, Stephen was by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. He refused to leave, no matter how many times the doctors tried to usher him away. Michelle clung to his hand, tears streaking her face as she silently prayed for her baby's safety. Miraculously, the doctors managed to halt the labor with medication and bed rest. By the next morning, Michelle was stable, though exhausted and emotionally spent. The baby's heartbeat was strong, a testament, perhaps, to the resilience that Michelle had clung to her entire life. Stephen remained in a chair beside her bed, his head in his hands, relief etched across every line in his face. When he noticed she was awake, he stood, gently brushing a strand of hair from her brow. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not leaving." She searched his eyes. For once, she saw no trace of guile, no flicker of deception, just genuine relief and love, or something very close to it. In that hospital room, where life and loss seemed to precariously balance on a razor's edge, Michelle felt a shift. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was room for forgiveness. Or maybe not. Only time would tell. But for now, their unborn child still had a fighting chance, and so, maybe, did they? Conclusion, approximately 150 words. With a CTA, thank you for joining us on this rollercoaster tale of love, betrayal, and second chances. Michelle, pregnant and determined, discovered her husband's secret affair at a dazzling Caribbean resort, only to learn how deep his deceptions ran. Amid heartbreak and shocking revelations, she refused to let her unborn child become a casualty of his desperate behavior. In the end, the unthinkable happened. Michelle nearly went into premature labor, forcing them both to realize what truly mattered. Whether they find a path to forgiveness or remain worlds apart, one thing is certain: the future holds twists no one could have predicted. If this story moved you, shocked you, or left you craving more tales of incredible drama and hidden truths, please like this video, share it with friends who love a juicy story, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating real-life fiction. Your support means everything, and we can't wait to bring you the next unbelievable tale.
What happens when the perfect life is built on a perfect lie? For 7 months, Catherine Vance Thorne believed she had it all. A loving husband, a multi-million-dollar empire at their fingertips, and their first child on the way. She pictured a future filled with laughter in their sprawling Manhattan penthouse. But her husband, the charismatic Marcus Thorne, was painting a different picture, one created during clandestine business trips. When a single damning clue sends a 7 months pregnant Catherine on a desperate drive to a secluded Hamptons resort, the masterpiece of deceit Marcus has been crafting is about to be slashed to ribbons. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a saga of high-stakes betrayal, corporate espionage, and a woman who discovers that the greatest power isn't in wealth, but in ruin. Stay with us. The late afternoon sun slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting long, distorted shadows across the Italian marble floors. From this vantage point, 60 stories above Central Park, New York City, looked like a schematic, a perfect grid of ambition and light. Catherine Vance Thorne rested a hand on the gentle, prominent swell of her abdomen, feeling the faint, fluttering kicks of the life within her. At 7 months pregnant, she felt both profoundly powerful and exquisitely vulnerable. The nursery was complete, a serene masterpiece of cream and gentle grey, with a handcrafted mobile of celestial bodies waiting to spin above a crib that had cost more than most people's cars. Everything in her life was curated for perfection, a testament to the combined might of the Vance and Thorne dynasties. Her family, the Vances, were old money, their wealth rooted in shipping and real estate, a quiet, unshakable force in the city's financial landscape. Marcus's fortune was newer, louder, forged in the volatile crucible of hedge funds. He was the brilliant, daring wunderkind, the man who could scent a market shift like a shark smells blood. Their marriage had been the society event of the year, a merger of legacy and audacity. Catherine traced the rim of a crystal glass, the condensation cool against her fingertips. She looked at her husband, who stood with his back to her phone, pressed to his ear. Marcus Thorne was a man sculpted by success. His Savile Row suit draped perfectly over his athletic frame, and his voice, even muffled, was a low, confident baritone that could soothe panicked investors and charm seasoned CEOs. He was her rock, the charismatic architect of their shared future. Or so she believed. "No, absolutely not," he said into the phone, his tone sharp. "The timeline is immutable. We move on the 25th, not a day later. Handle it." He ended the call with a decisive tap and turned a practiced smile, instantly softening the hard lines of his face. "Sorry about that, my love. Incompetence is the one market I can't seem to short." He crossed the vast living room, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the plush Aubusson rug. He knelt before her, placing a hand over hers on her belly. "And how are my 2 favorite people in the world doing?" "We're good." Catherine smiled the familiar warmth of his touch, chasing away a flicker of unease. "He's been active today. I think he's going to be a soccer player. Or a CEO who kicks his competitors into submission." Marcus grinned, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He leaned in and kissed her a deep, reassuring kiss that tasted faintly of expensive whiskey and something else she couldn't quite name. A scent. It wasn't his usual cologne Creed Aventus, nor was it her perfume. It was floral and slightly spicy, a woman's scent. She dismissed it. He'd been in meetings all day, surrounded by people. It meant nothing. "Listen." He began settling back on his heels, his expression turning serious. "Something's come up. A big something. You know the tech merger I've been working on? The one in San Francisco?" Catherine nodded. It was all he had talked about for weeks, a complex acquisition that would, in his words, reshape the digital landscape. Well, the key players have flown in for an unscheduled summit. It's last minute, I know, and I hate it, but I have to fly out tonight. It's only for a couple of days. 3 at the most. It's the final push, Kat. This deal will secure our child's future 10 times over. A knot of disappointment tightened in her chest. Tonight. But Marcus, my checkup is tomorrow. The big one. We were supposed to hear the heartbeat together again. His face fell with practiced perfect sympathy. I know, my love. I am so sorry. Believe me, I would rather be here holding your hand than in a sterile boardroom. But this is critical. The timing is everything. He stroked her cheek. I'll be back before you know it, and I promise I will not miss another appointment. I'll make it up to you. A week in Moustique after the baby comes. Just the 3 of us. The promise of a future luxury was a common balm he applied to present disappointments. It usually worked, but this time the unease lingered. It was the suddenness of it all. Marcus was a meticulous planner. Last-minute chaos wasn't his style. Of course, she said, forcing a smile. I understand. It's for us. Exactly, he said, relief washing over his features. He stood and kissed her forehead. I'll go pack. My flight is in 3 hours. As he walked towards their master suite, Catherine's gaze fell on his briefcase, which he had left by the sofa. A corner of a receipt was peeking out from the side pocket. Normally, she would never have looked. It would have felt like a violation, a crack in the foundation of their trust. But the faint alien scent of perfume, the suddenness of the trip, the slickness of his explanation. It all coalesced into a single sharp point of curiosity. Her heart thumping with a strange mix of guilt and apprehension, she reached out and slowly, carefully pulled the receipt free. It wasn't from a restaurant or a client lunch. It was from La Perle, the lingerie boutique. The date was from that very afternoon. She scanned the items: a silk chemise, an eyelash lace bra, a matching thong. Size small. Catherine was a medium, and with her pregnancy she had been living in comfortable, soft cotton. A cold dread, heavy and suffocating, began to seep into her bones. There could be an explanation. A gift for a friend's wife. A present for her, for after the baby. But why hide it? Why wouldn't he have given it to her with a flourish as he usually did? She quickly folded the receipt and slipped it back. Her hands trembling. She took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm the frantic thrumming of her pulse. She was being paranoid. The stress of the pregnancy was making her imagine things. Marcus loved her. He was building a life for them. He was a good man. He emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, pulling a sleek Rimowa carry-on. He was already in his travel attire, a comfortable but stylish cashmere sweater and dark trousers. He looked every bit the global executive on the move. All set, he announced, his voice breezy. The car is waiting downstairs. Now I want you to promise me you'll rest. Don't overdo it. Beatrice is coming over tomorrow to go with you to the doctor, right? Catherine nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Her sister Beatrice had always been more cynical about Marcus, seeing his ambition as a razor's edge that could easily cut both ways. Catherine had always defended him, painting Beatrice's concerns as sisterly overprotection. Now Beatrice's skeptical words echoed in her mind. Good, Marcus said. He pulled her into a hug, his arms strong and secure. It felt like a lie. The whole embrace felt like a hollow performance. I'll call you the moment I land. I love you more than anything. "I love you too," she managed to whisper the words, feeling like ash in her mouth. She watched from the window as he got into the black town car, a tiny, insignificant figure 60 floors below. The car didn't turn east towards JFK or LaGuardia. It headed west towards the West Side Highway, towards the Hamptons. The cold dread solidified into a terrifying certainty. The San Francisco Tech Summit was a lie. The lingerie wasn't for her. And her husband was not on a business trip. He was on his way to a rendezvous. Alone in the cavernous silence of their penthouse, surrounded by the Hewland trapping of their perfect life, Catherine Vance Thorne finally allowed the facade to crack. A single hot tear traced a path down her cheek, a silent harbinger of the storm that was about to break. She was not just a wife. She was a Vance. And the Vances did not crumble. They fought back. The question was, how? The initial shock was already hardening into something else, something cold and sharp. A plan began to form in the ruins of her trust, a plan that would take her from her gilded cage and set her on a collision course with the ugly truth. The silence in the penthouse after Marcus left was no longer peaceful. It was suffocating. Every ticking clock, every hum from the climate control system seemed to mock Catherine's newfound solitude. She walked through the grand rooms, touching the cold surfaces of their shared life, the polished mahogany of the dining table where they'd hosted glittering dinner parties, the soft leather of the armchair where he read the Wall Street Journal every morning. It all felt like a movie set the backdrop for a story she had mistakenly believed was her own. She sank onto the edge of their vast bed, the La Perla receipt burning a hole in her mind. It was a single piece of evidence, perhaps circumstantial. She needed more. Doubt was a poison, but certainty was a weapon. Her mind raced, sifting through the last few weeks, searching for other inconsistencies she had glossed over. The late-night conference calls, where his voice was hushed the weekends he'd spent at the office, but came home looking relaxed, not tired. The password on his personal laptop, which had always been her birthday, was suddenly changed. At the time, she had chalked it up to his company's new cybersecurity protocols. Now it seemed like a locked door she had never thought to question. The next morning, Beatrice arrived, her sharp eyes immediately registering the tension in Catherine's posture. Beatrice Vance was the opposite of her sister in many ways. Where Catherine was diplomatic and serene, Beatrice was blunt and fiery, her loyalty fierce and her bullshit detector flawless. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Beatrice said, foregoing a hello as she dropped her purse onto a chair. Did the Prince of Wall Street forget to kiss his pregnant princess goodbye? Catherine's composure, so carefully maintained, overnight crumbled. She handed her sister the receipt. Beatrice's eyes narrowed as she read it, her lips tightening into a thin line. Size small. Beatrice said flatly, "Well, that's not for you, is it? Not unless he's planning for 2 years from now. The man is many things, but a forward planner in lingerie is not one of them." She looked up at Catherine, her expression softening from sarcasm to deep concern. "Oh, Kath." What did he say? Through tears she could no longer suppress. Catherine recounted the story, the sudden trip, the San Francisco excuse, the car heading west. The Hamptons, Beatrice breathed, her mind already working. Of course, it's off-season, quiet, exclusive, the perfect place to hide a dirty little secret in plain sight. Marcus has a corporate account at the Seagate. It's one of those ridiculously private resorts where the staff is trained to be blind, deaf, and dumb. Catherine's blood ran cold. The Seagate. Marcus had taken her there for their first anniversary. It was secluded, nestled in a private cove, a haven of understated luxury. The memory was now tainted, corrupted. "I have to know, B." Catherine said, her voice gaining a steely edge that surprised even herself. "I can't sit here in this museum of our marriage and wait for him to come home smelling of lies and another woman's perfume. I have to see it for myself." Beatrice studied her sister. The tear-stained face was still there, but beneath it, a new resolve was hardening. This was the Vance bloodline, kicking in the same indomitable will that had allowed their great-grandfather to build a shipping empire from nothing. "Are you sure?" Beatrice asked gently. "You're 7 months pregnant. The stress, the shock." "What's more stressful?" Catherine countered, standing up, her hands protectively cradling her belly. "The agonizing uncertainty, or the cold, hard truth. This isn't just about my feelings anymore. This is about my child. I will not bring my son or daughter into a life built on a foundation of deceit. I need to know what I'm fighting." Beatrice nodded slowly, a grim smile touching her lips. "All right, then let's go to war. But we do it smart. No dramatic phone calls, no hysterics. We gather irrefutable proof. We need more than a receipt for some slutty underwear." The first step was logistics. A trip to the doctor's office was repurposed. While Beatrice waited in the car, Catherine had her appointment. The strong, steady rhythm of her baby's heartbeat was a reassurance, a tiny drumbeat of courage. She asked her obstetrician, Dr. Miller, if light travel was permissible. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Miller said warmly. "A short car ride, say a couple of hours, is perfectly fine. Just stay hydrated and don't overexert yourself." It was the clearance she needed. The next step was intel. While Catherine was at the doctor's, Beatrice was on the phone calling in a favor from a friend who worked in high-end concierge services. It was a long shot, but the world of the ultra-wealthy was surprisingly small. When Catherine returned to the car, Beatrice was tapping furiously on her phone. "Okay. I think I have something," she said, her voice low and excited. "My friend Jessica owes me one." She pulled some strings. "She can't access the Seagate's official guest list, but she has a source in their spa. Jessica's source confirms a booking was made for this afternoon. A 90-minute couple's deep tissue massage, booked under the name Mr. Thorne. The reservation notes specify 2 therapists, male and female, for Mr. and Mrs. Thorne. The words Mrs. Thorne felt like a physical blow. He was not just with another woman. He was giving her Catherine's title, her identity, in this secret, sordid world he had created. "The appointment is at 4 p.m. Beatrice continued, her voice hardening. "That's in 3 hours. We can make it if we leave now." The plan was audacious, bordering on reckless, but it was the only path forward that felt real. Catherine called the family's trusted driver, a stoic man named Frank, who had been with the Vances for 30 years and knew how to be discreet. She simply told him they needed to go to the Hamptons. He asked no questions. The drive out of the city was a blur. The familiar skyline receded, replaced by the manicured suburbs, and then the long, flat stretch of the Long Island Expressway. Catherine sat in the plush leather seat of the Mercedes, a bottle of water in her hand, her mind a maelstrom of past memories and future fears. She remembered Marcus proposing to her on a wind-swept cliff in Big Sur, telling her that his life had been black and white until she brought the color. Had that been a lie, too? Was he a sociopath, a brilliant actor playing the part of a loving husband? Beatrice, ever the pragmatist, was strategizing. Okay, when we get there, we can't just storm in. We need to be smart. You are Catherine Vance Thorne. You have every right to be there. We'll go to the front desk. You'll say you're surprising your husband. You'll be charming, poised. They know the Vance name. They won't question you. Ask for a key to his suite. The Oceanfront Villa 7. That's where he is. Beatrice had managed to get the villa number from her source. Villa 7. The most private, most expensive accommodation at the resort, with its own private plunge pool and a terrace that overlooked the desolate beauty of the winter ocean. What if he's not there? What if they're at the spa? Catherine asked, her voice trembling slightly. Then we wait, Beatrice said firmly. We sit in the lobby. We order tea, and we wait for Mr. and Mrs. Thorne to return from their relaxing afternoon. But my gut says they'll be back in the room. People like that, they want to enjoy every overpriced inch of the fantasy they've paid for. As they passed the iconic sign welcoming them to the Hamptons, Catherine felt a shift inside her. The fear was still there, a cold, hard knot in her stomach, but it was being overlaid by a chilling sense of purpose. She was no longer just the wounded pregnant wife. She was the CEO of this operation, the chief arbiter of her own fate. She smoothed down her dress, took a deep breath, and practiced the serene, confident smile she would need. She was about to step onto the stage of the biggest performance of her life, and she would not miss her cue. The unraveling thread had led her here to the edge of the Atlantic, and she was ready to pull it until the entire tapestry of lies came undone. The Seagate Resort and Spa was designed to look like it had been carved from the very dunes it occupied. Weathered grey cedar, vast expanses of glass and minimalist landscaping created an atmosphere of monastic, wildly expensive tranquility. Even in the stark light of a winter afternoon, it was beautiful. The beauty felt like an insult. Frank pulled the Mercedes S-Class smoothly under the portico. A valet, young and crisp in his uniform, rushed to open the door. Beatrice gave Catherine's hand a final firm squeeze. Showtime. Remember who you are. You own this place and everyone in it. Catherine stepped out of the car, pulling her cashmere wrap tighter around her shoulders. She was the very picture of refined elegance, her pregnancy only adding to her aura of serene maternal grace. No one would guess the tempest raging within her. The lobby was a cathedral of quiet luxury. A massive stone fireplace crackled at one end, and the air smelled of sea salt and burning birchwood. A single receptionist, a woman with impossibly perfect posture, stood behind a monolithic desk of reclaimed wood. Catherine glided towards the desk, Beatrice, a half step behind her, a silent guard. "Good afternoon," Catherine said, her voice smooth as cream. "I'm here to surprise my husband, Marcus Thorne. I believe he's in one of your oceanfront villas." The receptionist, whose name tag read Anja, offered a polite professional smile. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne. It's a pleasure to have you with us. May I see some identification?" Catherine produced her driver's license. Anja's eyes flickered from the ID to Catherine's face, then to the name Thorne. The recognition was instant. Marcus Thorne was a name that commanded respect and discretion. "Everything appears to be in order," Anya said, her smile warming slightly. "Mr. Thorne is checked into Villa 7. I must say it's a wonderful surprise. He mentioned he was here for some intense solitary work. The lie repeated by a stranger was like a fresh stab wound." Solitary work. Catherine's smile didn't waver. He works far too hard. I decided he needed a distraction. Could I trouble you for a key to the villa? I'd like to be waiting for him when he returns." This was the critical moment. A request for a second key without the primary guest present was a breach of protocol even for a spouse. Anya hesitated, her professional training warring with the desire to please a guest of Catherine's stature. Normally we would need to call the room to get Mr. Thorne's verbal confirmation. She began, her tone apologetic. Catherine leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a confidential, charming whisper. "Anya, I've just driven 2.5 hours from the city. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I'm desperate to see the look on his face when he walks in and finds me there. A phone call would spoil the entire thing. Surely we can keep this our little secret?" She placed a hand on her belly, a gesture that was both authentic and masterfully deployed. The combination of her name, her visible pregnancy, and her conspiratorial charm was too powerful to resist. Anya's professional resolve melted. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne," she said, her smile now genuine. "For you, we can make an exception. Let me program a key for you." As the receptionist worked, Beatrice let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Catherine was magnificent. She was playing the part of the adoring wife so perfectly, it was chilling. Keycard in hand, they walked away from the desk. "Villa 7 is at the far end of the property," Beatrice murmured. "It offers the most privacy. The most privacy to do what Catherine said, her voice a low, dangerous hum." The walk to the villa was the longest of Catherine's life. They followed a winding stone path that meandered through wind-swept seagrass. The air grew colder, sharper, and the sound of the crashing waves became a relentless roar. Each step was a drumbeat towards a detonation. Her earlier calm was evaporating, replaced by a raw, visceral dread. Her palms were sweating. Her heart hammered against her ribs. And then they were there. Villa 7. The name was etched on a simple, elegant plaque next to a heavy wooden door. It looked anonymous, innocuous, but behind it lay the truth. "Kath, are you ready?" Beatrice asked, her voice soft. Catherine looked at the door, then out at the grey, churning ocean. She thought of her unborn child, floating peacefully in its own silent world, oblivious to the tsunami about to hit theirs. That image gave her the final surge of strength she needed. "I am," she said. She turned to her sister. "Wait here. I have to do this alone." Beatrice hesitated, her protective instincts flaring. But she saw the look in Catherine's eyes. It was not a request, but a command. She nodded and stepped back. Catherine took a deep breath, held the keycard to the electronic lock, and waited for the small green light. It flashed. With a soft click, the lock disengaged. She pushed the door open. The villa's entryway led into a spacious living area, impeccably decorated in shades of sand and stone. A bottle of Bollinger champagne sat in a silver bucket on a low table, 2 flutes next to it. One was empty, the other half full, a faint lipstick smear on its rim. A man's jacket, Marcus's, was thrown carelessly over a chair, and from the bedroom just beyond, a partially open door, she could hear voices. A man's low laugh, Marcus's laugh, and a woman's higher, lighter laugh in response. The sound paralyzed her for a second. It was real. This was happening. Moving as if in a dream, she crept across the silent room. Her hand was steady as she pushed the bedroom door fully open. The scene before her was one of lazy post-coital intimacy. The king-sized bed was a tangle of white sheets. Marcus was propped up against the pillows, wearing nothing but a pair of boxer briefs, a tablet resting on his lap. And sitting next to him, her back to the door, was a woman. She was wearing a short, black silk robe, the one from the La Perla bag, Catherine realized with a sickening lurch. Her dark hair was tousled, and she was tracing a pattern on Marcus's chest with her finger. "You're sure no one will find out?" the woman's voice said. It was a voice Catherine vaguely recognized. "Your wife. She's not the suspicious type." Catherine Marcus scoffed, his tone dripping with a casual cruelty that shattered Catherine's heart into a million pieces. "She trusts me completely. She thinks I'm in San Francisco saving the world. She's a good woman, but a little naive. It's one of her charms." He was about to say more, but he glanced up, perhaps sensing a change in the light or a sudden chill in the air. His eyes met Catherine's. Time seemed to stop. The color drained from Marcus's face, replaced by a ghastly, mottled white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The tablet slid from his lap and hit the floor with a dull thud. He looked like a man who had just seen his own executioner walk through the door. The woman, sensing his sudden terror, turned around. Her face was a mask of confusion, which then morphed into shocked recognition. Catherine's blood turned to ice. She knew this woman. It was Sloane Davenport, a fiercely ambitious rising star at a rival investment firm, Sterling Nash. She was known for her beauty, her brilliance, and her utter ruthlessness. This wasn't some random, meaningless affair. This was a liaison with a direct professional competitor. Sloane Davenport stared at Catherine, her mouth slightly agape. For a moment, the three of them were frozen in a tableau of shock, betrayal, and discovery. It was Catherine who broke the silence. Her voice was not the shriek of a hysterical wife. It was low, calm, and utterly devastating. It was the voice of ice and steel. "Don't get up on my account," she said, her eyes locked on her husband's. "It seems you're in the middle of some very intense solitary work." She used his own lie as the first twist of the knife. Marcus flinched, as if she had physically struck him. The game was over. The perfect life was a ruin. And Catherine was standing in the rubble, the undisputed, terrifying victor of this first brutal battle. The silence that followed Catherine's words was thick and suffocating. Sloane Davenport, recovering her composure with the speed of a seasoned predator, quickly clutched the silk robe tighter around herself, a flicker of defiance in her eyes. But Marcus remained frozen, his face a canvas of pure, unadulterated panic. The cocksure master of the universe was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. "Catherine," he finally stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. What are you doing here? You should be in New York. The baby is fine." Catherine cut him off, her tone glacial. "He has a strong heart, unlike his father." She let her gaze drift disdainfully over Sloane, then back to Marcus. "I see the San Francisco Tech Summit was relocated, and that the dress code is more casual than I imagined. Is she part of the acquisition, Marcus, or just a disposable asset?" Each word was a precisely aimed dart. Sloane's face hardened. She stood up, a calculated move to assert some form of control. "I think I should go." "No," Catherine said, her voice dropping even lower, yet carrying an authority that rooted Sloane to the spot. "You stay. You were part of this business meeting. You should see it through to its conclusion." Catherine took a deliberate step into the room, her presence dominating the space. She looked around the suite at the champagne, the tangled sheets, the view of the desolate ocean. "It's a beautiful room. I remember it. We celebrated our first anniversary here. Did you tell her that, or does the personal history of the places you defile not matter? Marcus finally found his legs, scrambling out of the bed and grabbing for his trousers. Cat, please. Let's not do this here. Let's go somewhere and talk. This isn't what it looks like. Catherine let out a short, sharp laugh, devoid of any humor. It isn't what it looks like, Marcus. Do you think I'm an idiot? Do you have any idea how insulting that sentence is? I am standing in a hotel room that you booked under your name, looking at you and your associate from a rival firm half naked in a bed that you paid for. It is exactly what it looks like. The only question is for how long Sloane, seeing an opportunity to sow chaos, spoke up. For about 6 months, she said coolly, looking directly at Catherine. If you're going to have the details, you might as well have them all. It was a cruel, calculated blow designed to shatter Catherine's composure. But Catherine didn't even flinch. She didn't grant Sloane a single glance. Her focus remained entirely on her husband, the true architect of this betrayal. 6 months, Catherine repeated softly, nodding to herself. So this started just after we found out I was pregnant. That's a special kind of cruelty, Marcus. You deserve an award for it. She turned her movement fluid and graceful and walked back towards the door. She did not slam it. She did not run. She simply left, leaving a vacuum of shock and recrimination in her wake. Her retreat was more powerful than any screaming match could ever have been. Beatrice was waiting by the door, her face pale with anxiety. The moment she saw Catherine's expression, a mask of cold, terrifying calm, she knew. Let's go, Catherine said, her voice flat. They walked back down the winding path, the roar of the ocean now sounding like a symphony of her rage. She remained silent until they were safely inside the climate-controlled silence of the Mercedes pulling away from the resort. Only then did her body begin to tremble, a violent, uncontrollable shudder. The adrenaline wore off, and the crushing weight of the betrayal slammed into her. She didn't cry out. The sob was a silent, convulsive thing that racked her entire body. Beatrice wrapped her arms around her, offering what little comfort she could. He's dead to us, Beatrice whispered fiercely. He's nothing. We'll call Dad. We'll get the lawyers. We will burn him to the ground. Catherine's trembling slowly subsided, replaced by an icy resolve. Not yet, she said, her voice raspy. First, I need to understand everything. This wasn't just a cheap affair, Bea. The woman was Sloane Davenport. Beatrice's eyes widened. From Sterling Nash. Are you serious? Marcus is in the middle of that hostile takeover bid against them. What the hell is he thinking, sleeping with the enemy? I don't know, Catherine said. But I'm going to find out. They drove back to the city in near silence. When she arrived at the empty penthouse, it felt alien, contaminated. She instructed Frank to take her to her father's residence on the Upper East Side. She couldn't bear to be in the home she had shared with Marcus. Just as she was walking into the grand old-world lobby of her father's building, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus. She ignored it. He called again, and again. On the 10th call, a text message appeared. Cat, I know you hate me. I deserve it. But you have to listen. It is not what you think. Sloane is not my mistress. It's business. I am using her. Call me. It's vital. Catherine stared at the message, her heart pounding. I am using her. It was a desperate, self-serving excuse, a classic narcissist's gambit, reframe the betrayal as a brilliant, albeit ruthless, strategic move. He was trying to appeal to her pragmatism, to the part of her that understood the cutthroat world they lived in. She almost deleted it. But the mention of Sloane's name, the sheer audacity of the claim, planted a seed of doubt. What if in some twisted way he was telling a sliver of the truth? The affair being with a direct business rival was too specific, too reckless to be random. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus. She's been feeding me inside information on Sterling Nash, their defense strategy, their key shareholder weaknesses. This whole thing was a honey trap, but I was the one setting it. It was for the deal. For us. Please, Kat. I can explain. This was the twist. The sudden, nauseating turn. He was admitting to a different kind of crime. Not just adultery, but a deeply unethical, potentially illegal act of corporate espionage. He wasn't asking for forgiveness for the affair. He was trying to rebrand it as a sacrifice for their financial gain. He was trying to make her an accomplice. The revelation hit her with the force of a physical blow, leaving her breathless. Her husband was not just a cheat. He was a fool playing a dangerous game, or a monster trying to justify his actions with greed. The line between personal betrayal and professional conspiracy had just been irrevocably blurred. She stood in the marble foyer of her father's building, the phone heavy in her hand. The situation had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more dangerous. This was no longer just a divorce. It was a war on two fronts. And Marcus, in his desperation, had just handed her a new and powerful weapon, the knowledge of his methods. He thought he was explaining his way out of trouble. He had no idea he was giving her the ammunition she would need to ensure his complete and utter destruction. Alistair Vance's apartment was the antithesis of the sleek, modern penthouse Catherine shared with Marcus. It was a fortress of old money, filled with dark wood, ancestral portraits, and the comforting scent of leather and aged paper. It was a space that radiated permanence and power. Alistair himself was cut from the same cloth. At 65, he was tall and silver-haired, with piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. He was a man who had weathered market crashes, hostile takeovers, and personal tragedies with the same stoic, unshakable resolve. When Catherine, flanked by a grim-faced Beatrice, told him the story, he listened without interruption, his face an unreadable mask. He didn't rage. He didn't offer platitudes. He simply absorbed the information, his mind processing it, like a complex balance sheet. When she finished showing him the text messages from Marcus, he was silent for a full minute, his steepled fingers resting against his lips. "The man is a fool," he finally said, his voice a low rumble. "But a dangerous one. To attempt to justify infidelity as a business strategy. It's a level of moral bankruptcy that is frankly impressive." "He thinks it will work," Catherine said, her voice hollow. "He thinks I'm so invested in our wealth that I'll forgive the method. He's appealing to my avarice." "He is appealing to what he knows best," Alistair corrected gently. "He judges you by his own debased standards. He has profoundly underestimated you. That will be his undoing." He stood and walked to the vast window overlooking the city. "This is no longer a simple matter for a divorce attorney, Catherine. He has confessed in writing to corporate espionage. He has implicated himself in a plot that could not only destroy him, but also create significant blowback for our family, should it be handled incorrectly." "What do we do?" Beatrice asked, leaning forward. "We have him. Let's just release this to the board of his company." "Let's expose him." "No," Alistair said, turning from the window. "A public explosion is messy. It creates unpredictable shrapnel. We do not move until we control the entire board. We need to be surgical. First, we operate on the assumption that Marcus is lying, that this "I was using her" narrative is a fabrication to save his skin. But we also operate on the assumption that he might be telling the truth, which is in many ways worse. A man who would use an affair as a business tool is capable of any betrayal. Over the next 48 hours, the Vance residence became a war room. Alistair pulled in his top legal counsel and a private investigator, a former Mossad agent named Kobe, who specialized in discreet, high-stakes corporate intelligence. Catherine was not a passive participant. The shock had transformed into a cold, diamond-hard fury. She was an active strategist, her mind honed by a lifetime of observing her father proving to be sharp and ruthless. She provided Kobe with every detail she could remember about Marcus's recent behavior, names he had mentioned, trips he had taken, the new secretive patterns of his work. She gave him the login details to their shared cloud storage family accounts, anything that might hold a clue. Marcus believes his greatest weapon is his intelligence, Catherine told the team, her voice steady. His real weakness is his ego. He believes he is infallible, that he is the smartest man in any room. That's the vulnerability we will exploit. While Kobe began his digital deep dive, Catherine made a call. She dialed Gregory Shaw, Marcus's partner, and the COO of Thorn Capital. Gregory was the cautious, steady hand to Marcus's daring, often reckless genius. He was a numbers man, a risk analyst who had on more than one occasion privately expressed his concerns to Catherine about Marcus's aggressive strategies. Gregory. "It's Catherine Thorn," she said, her voice calm and professional when he answered. "I need to speak with you urgently, in person and off the record. It concerns a significant undisclosed liability to the firm." The gravity in her tone was unmistakable. They agreed to meet the next morning at a quiet cafe far from the financial district. Meanwhile, Kobe hit pay dirt. Buried deep in a nested folder in a shared family cloud account, a folder labeled Vacation Plans that Catherine had forgotten existed, he found Marcus's digital treasure trove. It was a series of encrypted files. But Marcus, in his arrogance, had used a password related to a personal milestone. Kobe's team easily cross-referenced the stock ticker of the first company he had bankrupted. Inside were Marcus's notes on the Sterling Nash takeover, and it confirmed his text messages. He was using Sloan. The files contained detailed summaries of their meetings, listing information she had supposedly provided about Sterling Nash's defense strategies, their board's divisions, their largest institutional shareholders' pressure points. Marcus had meticulously documented his own conspiracy. He saw it as a record of his brilliance. Catherine saw it as a signed confession. But as Kobe dug deeper, another layer emerged. He cross-referenced the intel Sloan had supposedly provided with real-time market data and Sterling Nash's public filings, and he found a discrepancy, a terrifying one. He called Alistair and Catherine into the study. "There is a problem," he said, his Israeli accent precise. "The information from the woman Sloan is not entirely accurate. Some of it is good, just enough to build trust. But the most critical data points, the ones about shareholder positions and their debt covenants, they are subtly wrong. They are not mistakes. They are traps." A hush fell over the room. "Explain," Alistair commanded. "The data Sloan has given him," Kobe continued, pointing to his screen, "is designed to encourage Thorn Capital to launch its takeover bid at a specific price point, targeting specific shareholders. But according to our real analysis, this strategy will fail. It will trigger a poison pill defense we've uncovered in Sterling Nash's corporate bylaws that is far more potent than the one she described. It wouldn't just block the takeover. The blowback would leave Thorn Capital dangerously over-leveraged and vulnerable. The stock would plummet. Catherine felt a chill crawl up her spine. The second twist. The real twist. So she wasn't the honey trap Catherine breathed. He was. She was playing him from the very beginning. Sloane Davenport wasn't a source. She was an assassin. She was feeding Marcus carefully crafted misinformation, leading him and his company towards a cliff, all while stroking his ego and letting him believe he was the master manipulator. She wasn't just sleeping with the enemy. She was gutting him from the inside out, using his own arrogance as her weapon. Alistair Vance allowed a slow, grim smile to spread across his face. "My God," he whispered. "It's brilliant. Utterly ruthless, but brilliant." He looked at his daughter, and his eyes were filled with a new kind of respect. "He handed you the gun to shoot him, and you've just discovered it's a cannon." Catherine now held all the cards. She had proof of Marcus's infidelity. She had his written confession of unethical corporate espionage. And now she had proof that his grand strategy was a catastrophic failure in the making a trap set by the very woman he thought he was controlling. She could not only destroy her husband personally, but could also save his company from his folly, positioning herself as the key player who uncovered the entire conspiracy. The next morning, when she walked into the cafe to meet Gregory Shaw, she was no longer just Catherine Thorn, the wronged wife. She was Catherine Vance, the inheritor of her father's strategic mind and ruthless execution. She was calm, prepared, and ready to make her first move in a game Marcus didn't even know she was playing. The power play had begun. The cafe was a discreet, anonymous place in Tribeca, the kind of establishment where powerful people went to have conversations they didn't want overheard. Gregory Shaw was already there, nursing an espresso, his face etched with worry. He was a man who lived by numbers and data, and the cryptic nature of Catherine's call had clearly unsettled him. "Catherine," he said, rising as she approached. "Thank you for meeting me. Is everything all right? You mentioned a liability." "Hello, Gregory," she said, her voice even. She didn't sit down immediately. "The liability isn't a what, it's a who. It's Marcus." Gregory's expression tightened. "I don't follow. Is this about the Sterling Nash deal?" "I'll admit his strategy is more aggressive than I'd like, but his projections are solid. His projections," Catherine said, "finally taking a seat, are based on a fantasy. A fantasy fed to him by his mistress, Sloane Davenport." The name landed on the table between them with the force of a physical object. Gregory visibly paled. Sloane Davenport. From Sterling Nash. That's impossible. It's professional suicide. For Marcus, yes. Catherine agreed. For her, it's the coup of a lifetime. For the next 20 minutes, Catherine laid it all out. She didn't speak with the emotion of a betrayed wife, but with the cold precision of a CEO delivering a devastating report. She told him about the affair, showing him a single damning piece of evidence on her phone, a time-stamped photo she had instructed Kobe to retrieve from the Seagate security footage, showing Marcus and Sloane entering the elevator together. Then she moved to the business. She explained the honey trap, the manipulated data, the poison pill. She detailed how Sloane was leading Marcus, and by extension the entire firm, into a perfectly designed ambush that would cripple them. She didn't show him Marcus's confessional notes. That was her trump card to be held in reserve. She presented only the hard data. Kobe had compiled the analysis that proved Sloane's information. was a lie. Gregory listened, his initial shock turning to dawning horror, and then to cold fury. He was a man who had dedicated his life to building Thorn Capital alongside Marcus, mitigating his partner's risks. To learn that Marcus had exposed them all, not just through recklessness, but through a toxic cocktail of arrogance and infidelity, was the ultimate betrayal. The man is a pyromaniac who thinks he can control fire, Gregory said, his voice shaking with rage. He's going to burn the entire firm to the ground for an ego trip. Yes, Catherine said simply. Unless we stop him. The board meeting to approve the final phase of the takeover is on Friday. We have 2 days. What do you want? Gregory asked, his eyes locking on hers. He was seeing her now not as the boss's wife, but as a player. A formidable one. I want what you want, Gregory. To protect the firm. To excise the cancer. I want you to rally the board members you trust. My father is already making calls to the institutional investors his family has relationships with. When Marcus walks into that boardroom on Friday, he will not be met with applause. He will be met with a unified front. And you? Gregory asked. What is your price? My price, Catherine said. Her voice dropping is his complete removal from the company he founded. His shares will be bought out at a valuation that reflects the damage he has caused. And my divorce will be quiet, swift, and uncontested. He will walk away with enough to live on, but he will be stripped of his power, his reputation, and his legacy. He will be a ghost on Wall Street. It was a ruthless, elegant, and total victory she was outlining. Gregory stared at her for a long moment, then gave a single, sharp nod. Friday. We'll be ready. The next 2 days were a blur of encrypted calls, discreet meetings, and strategic maneuvers. Alistair Vance worked his magic behind the scenes, his influence turning the tide of investor sentiment. Gregory Shaw, armed with Catherine's irrefutable proof of the flawed data, secured the loyalty of the other board members. They were all sharks, and they could smell the blood in the water, Marcus's blood. On Friday morning, Marcus Thorn walked into the boardroom on the 50th floor of the Thorn Capital building, feeling triumphant. He believed he was on the verge of the greatest victory of his career. He had tried calling Catherine dozens of times, but she hadn't answered. He assumed she was angry, hysterical, but would eventually come around once she saw the billions his brilliant, if unorthodox methods had secured for their family. He smiled as he took his seat at the head of the long, polished table. Good morning, everyone. A historic day. No one smiled back. The atmosphere in the room was arctic. Gregory Shaw sat to his right, his face like stone. The other board members stared at him with cold, appraising eyes. Before we begin, Marcus Gregory said, his voice dangerously calm, we have another matter to discuss. An independent risk assessment of the Sterling Nash data has revealed some alarming inconsistencies. Marcus's smile faltered. What are you talking about? My source is ironclad. Is your source Sloane Davenport? Gregory asked flatly. The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked around the room at the hostile faces and realized too late that this was not a meeting. It was an ambush, an execution. And then the boardroom doors opened. Catherine walked in. She was flanked by her father and 2 lawyers. She was composed, powerful, her pregnancy a symbol not of vulnerability, but of the future a future that would not include him. She took a seat at the opposite end of the table, directly in his line of sight. "Catherine," he choked out. "What is this?" "This, Marcus," she said. Her voice, ringing with clarity in the silent room, is called due diligence. Something you abandoned 6 months ago. One of her lawyers slid a folder down the table to him. It contained the photo from the hotel, the analysis of Sloane's flawed data, and on top printouts of his own text messages to Catherine. His own words condemning him. "I am using her." He stared at the documents, his empire crumbling before his eyes. He had been outmaneuvered, out-thought, and utterly destroyed. "The board has held an emergency session," Gregory announced into the void. "We have voted unanimously. We are tabling the Sterling Nash bid indefinitely pending an internal investigation into your conduct, and we are asking for your immediate resignation as CEO and chairman." Marcus looked from the board members to Alistair Vance, whose expression was one of cool satisfaction. Then his gaze fell on his wife. Her face held no pity, no lingering affection. It held only the serene calm of a victor. He was finished. He knew it. Sloane Davenport's scheme had been exposed, but not by him. His affair had been uncovered. His professional judgment was shattered. He had lost everything, all because he had made the fatal mistake of underestimating the woman who carried his child. Catherine stood up, her part in the proceedings complete. She didn't need to say another word. As she walked out of the boardroom, she didn't look back. She was walking towards her new life, one she would forge herself from the ashes of her husband's ruin. She was no longer just a Vance by name. She had become the embodiment of its power. Her child would be born into a legacy not of lies, but of strength secured by a mother who had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged the queen of the board. In the end, it wasn't the affair that brought down Marcus Thorne's empire. It was his hubris. He believed he could compartmentalize his life, keeping his betrayals neatly separated from his business. But lies are never contained. They bleed. They infect everything they touch. Catherine's journey from a trusting pregnant wife to a cold, calculating strategist shows us that the deepest wounds can forge the strongest armor. She didn't just survive. She conquered. By refusing to be a victim, she rewrote her own story and the future of everyone around her. What do you think? Was Catherine's revenge justified, or was it too ruthless? Could you have done what she did? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of drama, betrayal, and ultimate empowerment captivated you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a good tale of poetic justice, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas that are stranger and more compelling than fiction. Thank you for listening.